Oops. Okay. Okay. So today is the first session of the second semester on our course on braided fusion categories. So for those who did not join the WeChat group, here is the QR code. Okay. Okay. So as I said, this is the second semester. So we will begin this second semester by reviewing all what we did in the first semester. So this course closely examines the material in this paper. So last semester, in fact, we went up to section 3. We did section 1, 2, 3. So we will review this section 1, 2, 3 during the first session, and then we will do new material with section 4, etc. Okay. So what I will do in this reviewing session, I will read the introduction I wrote last time quickly to refresh our memory. And then regarding the main part, so from section 2, what should I do? Yeah. So then, what is that? Organization, preliminaries. Section. What is that? Oh, why the preliminaries is written here? Okay. So then when we will start section 2, so we will basically read the result, but we will skip the proof. Otherwise, it will make too much time. It will take too much time. But when we will start the new material from section 4, of course, we will make the proof. We will make the proof in details. Okay. So as usual, if you have any question, please ask on the WeChat group, which this is the best choice. Or you can try on the Zoom, but the WeChat group is better. I may not see the question directly, but what? What happened?
No, I will see the question if there are any question.
Yeah, later. Okay. So as I said, we review this paper by Drinfeld, Gelaki, Nietzsche, Shostrik. So I will read what I wrote last time. So we begin by providing a thorough and self-contained overview of the known results on braided fusion category without assuming they are premodular or non-degenerate. Following this, the primary objective of this course is to introduce the concept of the core of a braided fusion category. This concept enables us to distinguish the components of a braided fusion category that are not derived from finite group. So that's very, very important. In fact, this is so by this abstract, we specify that this course is not a general course on braided fusion category. It is focused on this aspect, the core, to distinguish the finite group component from what is not. Okay. Okay, so what do you need to know to follow this class? So you need to have some familiarity with the concept of fusion category. However, we will review the key definition and fundamental result. Otherwise, you can we refer to this paper and this book. So Ettinghoff, Gelaki, Nishi-Shostrik, book 2015, and this paper by Ettinghoff, Nishi-Shostrik in Annals of Math. But you can also, so I did a 2-semester class on general tensor categories. So you can go to this this class, which are so now, now there is a new website. So this was the website for the last year. So now it's let me check. Now it is like that. So this year is on Fuse Cat 2. Like that. So the one which is in which is on the WeChat group. This is last year. This is this year. Okay. Okay. So introduction. Okay, so every field is algebraically closed of characteristic 0. Okay. So a K-linear category. Let me come back to that. K-linear category is an additive category where each home group is a vector space over the field K, and the composition of morphism is K-linear. Okay. So tensor category. So I don't know why there is this problem here. Tensor category. For monoidal K-linear category. Yeah, so yeah. In fact, yeah. Okay, that's why I wrote this way. Because regarding the new definition of tensor category, in fact, a tensor category is more restrictive than just monoidal K-linear category. But what was written, I guess, in the paper we are covering, maybe do not align with the more recent book of Ettinghoff, Gelaki, Nishi-Shostrik anyway. So monoidal K-linear category is a K-linear category equipped with a monoidal structure such that the B functor is bilinear on morphism. Okay, so monoidal structure refer to this book. Yeah, so this is what I said, in fact. In this book, the notion of tensor category is more restrictive. So in this book, which appeared 5 years after the paper, we need more than that. We need locally finite, rigid, indecomposable with a unit. The unit is linear simple, which means that. Okay, so in this class, we adopt this more recent convention notation. Okay. Okay, so a fusion category is a monoidal K-linear category that satisfies the following condition. It's semi-simple and rigid. Okay, so I go quickly. I don't read this comment. And it has only finitely many isomorphism class of simple object. The space of morphism are finite dimensional, and the unit is simple. Okay. So in this book, a fusion category is just a semi-simple finite tensor category. Okay. Next, a braided fusion category is a fusion category equipped with a natural isomorphism. So a natural isomorphism, remember, it's a collection of isomorphism here, this way. And each such isomorphism is depicted this way. So the braiding, this is really the braiding between X and Y. And this natural isomorphism satisfies the hexagon axiom. So refer to this book. Okay, so the simplest example of a fusion category is a pointed category, meaning all the simple objects are invertible. Okay, so it means when you tensor the object within a dual, it is isomorphic to the unit. Okay. And any pointed fusion category is equivalent to vec G deformed by some 3 cocycle, where G is a finite group, and vec G is a finite G-graded vector space, etc., etc. So this is well known. C'est OK. So braided versus premodular. So let me, for people who are new in this class, for people who did not attend last semester, what I am doing now is I'm just reviewing quickly what we did last semester. Once we reach section 4 of the paper where we did not reach last semester, I will go into the details and I will write everything by hand. Now I'm just reviewing, so it's very quick. If you want something slower, you should go to the video which are on last semester website. So here you have video and note for last semester, and you can attend. You can watch this video where I wrote this note slowly and in details, etc. Okay. So I don't know. Maybe this reviewing. Usually the reviewing take 4 sessions. I do like that every year when I continue a previous class, and usually it takes me 4 sessions. So during 4 sessions, I will read like that, and after that it will be slower and in more details. Okay. So braided versus premodular. So most results on braided fusion category in the literature, so before 2010, are stated under the assumption that the category is premodular, meaning that it has a spherical structure. So refer to this book. So many results specifically apply to modular categories. Many results specifically apply to modular categories, which are premodular categories that satisfy the non-degeneracy condition. However, the spherical structure is irrelevant to the question addressed in this course and many other contexts. Okay, so this spherical structure you can omit, and in fact, most of the results are still true even if you omit this convention, this assumption made before. Okay. Therefore, this course will also generalize certain non-results. So by omitting this spherical structure. Okay. Despite its presence in all known examples of fusion category. Despite its presence in all known. Okay, so this sentence saying that in fact all known examples of fusion category are spherical. It's an open problem whether every fusion category admits a spherical structure. But yeah, we don't know. So whenever possible, the non-degeneracy assumption will be also avoided. So we have spherical structure and non-degeneracy assumption. If it is possible, and this is the goal of this class, in fact, the goal of this paper, we omit or we generalize without spherical and without non-degeneracy assumption. So this will not be always possible, but this will most of the time be possible. Okay. So the core of a braided fusion category. So this subsection introduces a key new concept. Before discussing it in details in this subsection, an informal explanation is provided to highlight its significance. Okay, informal discussion. So classifying all braided fusion categories is likely unfeasible, as it includes the difficult problem of classifying all finite groups. Given a braided fusion category C, it is natural to attempt to separate the part of C that arises from finite group from the remaining part denoted C index 1. The core permitted to provide a precise definition of C index 1 as the adjoint of the core of C. Okay, so we will define the core of C and the adjoint. So the adjoint is defined here. So we will define the notion of core of C, and the neutral component of this core will be so even I have still a doubt about that. The core permits to provide a precise definition of C1 as the adjoint of the core of C. Anyway, so everything will be defined in details, but for the just now, I have a doubt. Is the core C1? In fact, last time I did the main misunderstanding, but anyway, I forgot whether the core is C1. No, precise definition of C1. Yeah, you should not care much about what is written C1 here because it's just informal. Everything will be defined in details, and I guess the core of C is precisely what we want, the remaining part. Anyway. Anyway, so we'll go into the details even in this introduction, so don't worry about that. So a notable property of C1 is that if its global dimension or its Frobin span dimension is odd, then it decomposes as the tensor product of simple braided fusion category. So which means categories that are neither pointed nor symmetric and do not contain a non-trivial fusion subcategory. Yeah, so here there is a confusion in the literature because usually simple means just do not contain a non-trivial fusion subcategory. So this is the nowadays definition of simple, but in this paper, they restrict it also to non-pointed, non-symmetric. Okay. So in particular, SVEC, which is symmetric, is not simple according to this definition. And this is very funny because in one of my paper, intermediate subfactor, interpolated subfactor panel subfactor, interpolated fusion ring, I wrote a kind of typo because I omitted SVEC as simple. But at that time, I did not know about this definition. But so in my interpolated paper, there is no typo if you use this definition of simple. But as I said, the nowadays definition is only that, so you have to be careful. Anyway, so it is expected that a similar result, so more complex, can be established without assuming the odd. Yeah, so here, if you assume odd, in fact, you can decompose into simple. Even if, and we expect something similar to be true without assuming odd dimension, decomposition into simple. Anyway, the problem is that in this paper, any other paper that they stated the result about decomposition into simple, but they said we will prove that in a coming paper that the paper never come. So there may be some result in this paper which admit no proof in the literature. If I'm not mistaken. Let me check. Where is it? I want to make things very precise. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. So where is it? Yeah, it take too much time to that. I don't think I can find it quickly. So I will take one more minute, otherwise I will mention that later tomorrow. Maybe that. Yeah. I got it. Theorem 533 in this paper, Drinfeld et al. The following property of a braided fusion category C are equivalent. C is weakly anisotropic and ordinary. B, there exists a decomposition into a Deligne tensor product into simple and pointing. And I wrote the proof will be given in a subsequent article. So, but in fact, the proof never comes. So the theorem 5.33 in the Drinfeld et al. Paper has no proof as far as I know. Okay. Okay. Okay, definition and main result. So here we will go into the details. Okay. So let E be, so G is a finite group and E is a maximal Tannakian subcategory. So in particular, it is Tannakian, so it of this form, rep G, for some finite group. So maximal Tannakian subcategory in the braid fusion category C. So what is the core of C with respect to E? It is, so the Drinfeld, no, not the Drinfeld, the Muger centralizer. Yeah, the centralizer of E. Is written there. The centralizer of E with a kind of relative tensor product with VEC with respect to E. So this is called a disequivalentization. So that will be this is what we will explain in section 4. The disequivalentization. Okay. So you have that. Let me write something. I have a doubt. Oh yeah, I wrote something about the core in a recent paper. I forgot if I define it this way or by the neutral component. I always confuse between the two. Because this is a disequivalentization. So in particular, if I'm not mistaken, there is the G grading. So yeah, you can consider the neutral component of the grading according to that. Anyway, so of course we will explain that in details later. The disequivalentization. So disequivalentizing the centralizer of E. So this category, as I said, this category naturally carry an action of G. It has a braided autoequivalence. So let gamma E denote the image of G in the group of isomorphism classes of braided autoequivalence of the core. Okay. So the theorem 5.9 established that. So the equivalence class of that is independent of the choice of that. Okay, because it is maximal. So what is the point of that? The point is that you may have several distinct maximal Tannakian subcategories, but this theorem is saying that the core is more or less independent of the choice. Okay, so this is, in that sense, this is a fundamental result because you can universally remove or quotient by the group part, the classical part. There's no choice. In particular, it's an invariant of the braided fusion category. Okay, so it is expected to be valuable in the studies of braided fusion category. Okay. So in this paper, a method is outlined for a braided fusion category from its core and additional finite group data. Method is outlined. Okay. An example of such reconstruction is given in this theorem, which states that non-degenerate braided fusion category with a trivial core are precisely the center of a pointed category. Okay. Okay. So I guess, so if I'm not mistaken, in this reference they mention, they discuss reconstruction theorem. So you start, so okay, you start from a category. You have this core, which is a universal invariant. So this is also a category. So can we come back to C? So if I'm not mistaken, in this reference, I explain how to come back in some sense. But in the paper we are covering now, in a specific case that the core is trivial, then it's already completely classified as center of pointed category. Okay. Okay, so furthermore, it is shown that the core is weakly anisotropic. Meaning that it has no non-trivial Tannakian subcategory. So this is for anisotropic, has no non-trivial Tannakian subcategories, and weakly you have to add to it, so it's a relax that remains stable under all braided autoequivalence. So of course, what we are interested in is only the green part, the yellow part, has no non-trivial Tannakian subcategory. Because if it has no non-trivial Tannakian subcategory, it really means that you cut the group part. But in fact, as it is explained here, this weak version is still good because of this theorem, which this is the theorem I mentioned, which are announced to appear in a subsequent paper, but the paper never did not appear yet. Yeah. So this theorem states that a Brady fusion category is weakly anisotropic if and if, so as I recall last time, it is isomorphic to a specific pointed fusion category times an anisotropic one. Okay. And this theorem says that a weakly anisotropic plus ordinary. So you have three types of weakly anisotropic. So ordinary, easing, and something else I forgot. But if you specify ordinary, which means that the intersection of the pointed part by its centralizer is equal to the centralizer of C, which is VEC. So in particular, C is non-degenerate. So in this case, you can, we expect we can, because we are still waiting for the proof, we expect we can decompose into the tensor product where C is pointed and is and C is anisotropic if only if this one is anisotropic. Okay. So yeah. Etc. And this one are simple. Braided fusion category. So this we are saying that the odd dimensional case is always ordinary. In particular, this theorem covers the previously stated theorem in the odd dimensional case. Okay. So additional result. Characterization of center of pointed category. So as we mentioned, the fusion subcategory, so we mentioned this result previously in the introduction. So a fusion subcategory L of a braided fusion category is called a Lagrangian if it is Tannakian and coincides with its centralizer. So this equals this. Okay? So this is Lagrangian. And this theorem established that a non-degenerate braided fusion category D is equivalent to the center of a pointed fusion category if and if it contains a Lagrangian subcategory. So this is very useful. So more precisely, so this theorem shows that it is an equivalence of groupoid between the Lagrangian subcategories of D and the realization of D as the center of a pointed fusion category. Anyway. Invariance of the central charge in premodular category. Okay, so in this theorem establishes a relationship between the Gauss sum, so we will define that later, of a premodular category and that of the fiber category, this way, associated to a Tannakian subcategory. So in this paragraph, the Tannakian category may not be maximal. So this may not be the core. Okay. As a consequence, this corollary shows that the central charge of C and of that fiber category are the same. Same central charge. So we will define central charge at Gauss sum later. So I omitted to discuss section 1.5 in the paper, the classical quantum analogy. So you should directly see the paper, because it is based on, so let me read, I even forgot the title, the content of that. It is based on some notion I was not, it's purely heuristic, so it's not necessary. It's based on notions which I'm not familiar with, so like Lie coalgebra, Casimir Lie algebra, etc. So for people who are familiar with that, it's good to read. If you are not familiar with that, it may be more confusing. It may be confusing to read that. It's not necessary. You can skip that. If you are familiar with Lie algebra, Lie coalgebra, etc., you can read that, but otherwise you should not. Okay, so organization. So we are almost done with introduction. So the organization, so section 1 is introduction, section 2 preliminaries. So, and then you have section 3, 4, 5. So what about preliminaries? So the preliminaries, so it reviews the background material from the theory of fusion category. For a braided fusion category without a fixed spherical structure, the notion of S matrix is not defined. You need spherical structure for the usual definition of S matrix. But without spherical structure, we have the notion of S-tilde matrix. So the category C is defined as a non-degenerate if its S-tilde matrix is not degenerate, meaning that it is invertible. Okay, so in this this proposition formulate two other conditions that are equivalent to the non-degeneracy of C. So non-degeneracy is defined first by invertible S-tilde matrix. But in this proposition, which will be in section 3, you have two equivalent definitions. The triviality of the Muger center, one of which is the triviality of the Muger center. This definition is well known in the case of premodular category. Muger notion of centralizer play a central role in this group. Okay. So the section 3, centralizer in and non-degeneracy of braided fusion category. So this section extends Muger result on centralizer to braided fusion category that are not necessarily non-degenerate or not necessarily premodular. The concept of projective centralizer is also introduced and studied. Okay, section 4. So remember that last semester we went up to there. So in fact, we spend most of the time in the preliminaries and in this section, and we stop here. So once we have finished to review what we did last semester, we'll start with the details of this section 4, equivalentization and disequivalentization. So it addresses two mutually inverse constructions, equivalentization and disequivalentization. Following the ideas of Alain Bruguière and Michael Muger, it is shown that the data of a fusion category with an action of a finite group is equivalent to a fusion category over the Tanakian category RepG, where the composition is fully faithful. Okay. The passage from an action of G to a category over RepG. So you have two notions you have to keep in mind, but we will see that in details later. You consider a fusion category with an action of G or define over RepG. And we will explain. We will define that in details and explain in what sense they are equivalent. So the passage from one to the other is achieved by taking the category of G equivariant object And the reverse process, disequivalentization, involves taking the fiber category. Okay. So fiber category we already mentioned before. This is what what we wrote here. Fiber category. Okay. So of course we will see that in great details. This will be the main purpose, the main point of this semester. This correspondence also applies to group action on braided and premodular categories as described in this theorem. Okay, so for premodular category, disequivalentization coincide with modularization as introduced by Bruguière and Hughes. Okay. So disequivalentization, you don't need sphericality, but under spherical assumption, this is already known as modularization by Bruguière and Hughes. This framework provides two complementary ways to study the structure of braided fusion category, one based on Danakian subcategory and another based on group action. Okay. And this subsection describes the structure of braided fusion category containing a subcategory, Danakian subcategory, viewed as equivalentization of braided G cross category, etc. Okay. This is connected to work by Kirillov, Muger, Tourayev. At the end of this section, the characterization of the center of pointed fusion category, as mentioned before, is established. Okay, we have the result involving the notion of Lagrangian. Okay, and then section 5, the core of a braided fusion category. So this section presents the main new contribution of this paper, the core of a braided fusion category C, as already mentioned before, defined and studied. And the class of weakly anisotropic braided fusion category is introduced. These categories, like non-trivial Danakian subcategory, stable under all braided autoequivalence. So as we mentioned before. So these two theorems, as already mentioned, explain why it is reasonable to have this relaxed section, as I already mentioned. Section 6, Gauss sum. So this section discusses the Gauss sum of premodular categories, generalizing classical Gauss sum. What happened? Okay. Generalizing classical Gauss sum for premetric group. So you have a notion in group theory, notion of Gauss sum, which generalizes to premodular category. The invariance of the central charge of a premodular category, as mentioned before, is proven. In the case where a braided fusion category C lacks a spherical structure, the concept of Gauss sum is not defined. However, if C is non-degenerate and weakly integral, I forgot why I wrote that in two parties, is Perron-Frobenius dimension is integral. Maybe the omitted, I guess. So in this section, introduce a modification called the Gauss-Frobenius-Perron sum. So common, since every weakly integral fusion category is pseudo-unitary, and every pseudo-unitary fusion category admits a spherical structure, a weakly integral braided fusion category should always be premodular. Yeah, okay. This comment is saying that, in fact, this last sentence may be redundant because there is nothing is relaxed. By a future result, we already know that weakly integral is always have a spherical structure. So there is nothing new in some sense. Then the paper finished with appendices. So as I mentioned last semester, we we will do appendices this year, this semester, only if we have time. But otherwise, we will not do a third semester for the appendix, because in fact, the appendix are 1/3 of the paper. So we may not cover the appendix part. I expect we will be able to, this semester, to cover section 4 and 5, maybe a beginning of section 6, or maybe the beginning of appendix, but otherwise we will not do a third semester about that. Maybe next semester we will. I did not decide what I will teach next semester, but maybe next semester we will cover our recent work with Moina Ghosh about Frobenius subalgebra in tensor category, because there are a lot of new material which are very interesting. Okay, but let me cover what these appendix are about. So I am out of the pause notes. Yeah, so we will discuss the content of the appendix after the pause. Yeah, so 5-minute pause. What? Okay. So we were here. Okay, so Appendix A, premetric group and their Gauss sum. So it contains basic results on quadratic form on finite abelian group, most of which are well known. Appendix B, Ising category. It provides a summary of known facts about Ising category, non-pointed. So Ising category is by definition a non-pointed fusion category of dimension 4, and the braided structure on them. Appendix C. The H-Schuler-Brugger characterization of centralizer. So it recalls a characterization of centralizer in braided fusion category due to these two guys. A key technical result used in the proof in section 3. Appendix D, pointed braided categories and premetric group. It offers an alternative proof of a theorem of Joyal and Street, which states that every premetric group arises from a pointed braided fusion category. So it's saying that, in fact, the classical case premetric group is covered by the quantum framework, the fusion tensor category framework, properly covered. Appendix E, extension of group by. So let me just say that here is just, a pointed braided fusion category is exactly the data of a pointed fusion category, exactly the data of a premetric group. Okay, so this is proved by these people, and this appendix provides an alternating proof. So appendix E, extension of group by braided GR category. So this is a little technical. So it introduces the notion of extension of a group by a GR category, also known as categorical group. It shows that in the case of pointed categories with a faithful grading, 2IF concept of a braided G-cross category is equivalent to the idea of a central extension of a group by a braided GR category. So connected to the work of Carrasco Cigaro. And finally, the appendix C, complexified grothendieck ring and fusion subcategory. It proves that a full subcategory of a fusion category that is closed under tensor product is automatically rigid. And this is interesting because, in fact, this generalizes the result saying that a finite monoid, a finite submonoid of a finite group, no, a submonoid of a finite group is a subgroup. Because rigid generalizes the notion of inverse. A monoid may not have inverse, but if it is included in the finite group, then it has automatically an inverse. And if you are interested, I was interested in that. And in fact, I wrote an alternating proof of that also. You can find an alternating proof of that. I wrote, because I asked that in a question on matter overflow. So at that time, I did not know this appendix. And then one of my collaborators, Sébastien Boursiou, mentioned this appendix to me. But I was not completely satisfied by the proof here. The proof here is a little rushing in some sense. So I provided a completely self-contained proof of that as an answer of my matter overflow question. Which it's alternating in some sense, in fact. It's not covering exactly the step here. There are some new material. Okay, so preliminaries. Okay. So this section provides an overview of the key definition and result related to fusion category and Bredis fusion category. Primarily following Bakalov-Kirillov. So here are the main reference, Bakalov-Kirillov, De Ligne, Ettinghoff-Nietzsche-Shostrick, Gelaki-Nietzsche, Joya-Street. And in fact, when it is appropriate, we will also wrote comment regarding the new book which appear after this paper we are covering, 5 years after. But sometime with a new notation, etc., we are usually in green. So throughout this work, all categories are assumed to be over an algebraically closed field of characteristic 0. So basics on fusion category. So the concept of fusion categories and pointed fusion category were introduced in the introduction, so we don't need to recall again. The fusion subcategory, and here this is what I mentioned about monoid, submonoid of a finite group, which is a subgroup. So the generalization is mentioned here and proved in the appendix, because I define a fusion subcategory as if you define, in fact, what they are doing here. They are saying that because a finite, because the submonoid of a finite group is a subgroup, there is no need to define a subgroup as a subgroup, just need to define a subgroup as a submonoid, because it's automatically a subgroup in the finite case. This is exactly what they are saying here. There's no need to define a fusion subcategory as a fusion category, just as a full tensor subcategory, satisfying the condition that if you have an object, so let me a full tensor subcategory. Yeah. Okay. More precisely, a full tensor subcategory. So I don't read the thing in green. So it's saying the condition that if an object X is isomorphic to a direct summand of object here, then okay, so you take an object here and you take the summand decomposition. Every summand is also here. So you take an object here, you decompose as an object here, and every component is also here. Okay. Okay. And this will be automatically rigid. There is no rigid assumption, but as mentioned here, it will be rigid. So as an additive semi-simple category, C prime, so be careful here, C prime is not a centralizer, it's just notation. It's not a centralizer. As an additive semi-simple category, C prime is generated by some simple object of C. So grossly speaking, the data of a fusion subcategory is the same as the data of a subset in the set of simple objects. So it is known, so in this appendix, that every fusion subcategory is rigid, implying that it is a fusion category. Okay, so given a fusion category and a collection of objects, the fusion subcategory generated by S, is the smallest fusion subcategory containing S. So you have the notion of fusion subcategory generated by some collection of objects, as you can expect, in fact. So image of a tensor functor. So you take two fusion category and a tensor functor between the two. So definition of tensor functor here. The image of F, denoted Fc, is a fusion subcategory of D generated by the object Fx for all x in C. So you take exactly this definition. You take S to be the collection of this object, and you generate the fusion subcategory, and it will be exactly this image. It is called surjective if the image is everything. Okay, so be careful. Here, surjective is, as I said last semester, may not be the direct generalization of a surjective function. So because we are in category framework, you can have some ambiguity. So how to generalize surjective, and you may have two possibilities. This is one possibility, but then you may have other possibility. In particular, yeah, the point is that it's not true that every object here is of this form. You may have an object here which is not of this form, but every object here, if it is surjective, is a component of tensor product of object of this form. So you have the subtlety in the group case or in a set. You don't have this subtlety, in particular for group, because the product of two elements of a group is an element of the group. There is no sum. But here you have to be careful. Anyway, an additive category, as an additive category, this image is generated by the simple object here that appear in the direct segment of, exactly as I said. Generated by, okay. For any fusion category, C, we denote O of C, the set of isomorphism class representative of the simple object of C. So it's a classical notation. The category C is said to be trivial if it has only one simple object up to isomorphism, a unit object. In this case, it is equivalent to VEC, fusion category of finite-dimensional vector space over the field. Okay, the adjoint category of a fusion category. So we mentioned the notion of adjoint before in the introduction. So the adjoint category of fusion category C, denoted like that, C index add, is the fusion subcategory generated by this collection. Okay? So you take the simple object tensor with the dual, its dual, every simple object tensor with its dual. This is a collection of objects. So it's a collection like the S here. And you generate the subcategory from this collection, and this is precisely C add. Okay. And in the classical case, in the finite group case, this has a precise group theoretical formulation. So you take a finite group and you take the category of representation, of finite dimensional representation on the finite group, then it's adjoint subcategory. So this ad is equivalent to the category of representation of the group quotiented by the center. Okay, so it's the fact that you have a quotient. This is one aspect, but every fusion subcategory of that is of the form rep G quotiented by a normal subgroup. Every fusion subcategory of this form. But for this specific fusion subcategory, the normal subgroup is the center. Okay. Okay, so we use the adjoint subcategory to define the universal grading. So before universal grading, what is a grading? So grading of a fusion category C by a group G is a function deg for degree from the simple object of isomorphism to the group that satisfy the following property. So for any three simple objects, X, Y, Z, such that Z is a summand of X tensor Y, then the degree of Z is a product of the degree of G by the degree of, here is a product in the group. This grading induces a decomposition, so you can, according to the degree. And so this is the full additive subcategory generated by the simple object of degree G. The subcategory C1 corresponding to the neutral element, so what we call the neutral component, is a fusion subcategory called the trivial component or neutral component of the grading. A grading is said to be trivial if the neutral component is everything, and is said to be faithful if this map is surjective. The collection of all grading of C by the finite group G depend functorially on G, leading to the notion of universal grading. So here the notion of universal grading is defined directly universally, but in fact, as we will state here, or here, it is the universal grading is directly related to the adjoint subcategory. In fact, the adjoint subcategory is always a neutral component of the universal grading, and the converse is also true. So universal grading, as explained in this paper by Gelaki-Nikšić, a universal grading always exists, and the corresponding group is denoted like that, UC. So I omit to read this. So this is basically what we expect for universal grading. You need the notion of grading, and you have the universal property, category theory, etc. Commuting diagram. The following key result is proved in Gelaki-Nikšić. So the universal grading is faithful. The trivial component of the universal grading is the adjoint subcategory. Moreover, every fusion subcategory that contains C-had as the what? As the form. No, as the form, yeah. Every fusion subcategory containing C-had is of this form. So you have it's given by a subgroup of the universal grading group. Okay, and the group of tensor automorphism of the identity functor is canonically isomorphic to that. The group of tensor automorphism of the identity functor, so this This sentence is a bit tricky, but in fact, this is very natural and very useful. The group of, so you are in the category C. You have the identity functor in the category C. So the trivial functor between C to itself. But the group of tensor automorphism of this functor is not something trivial. This is something containing non-trivial data. And in fact, this group is isomorphic to the dual of the universal grading group. According to that, but in fact, because the universal grading group is abelian, are we in the braided case? I guess we are in the braided case. C is a braided category, no? No, any fusion category. Okay, so in the braided case, universal grading group is abelian, but in general, it may not be abelian. So in the braided, if the universal grading group is abelian, then this is isomorphic to that. The dual is isomorphic. The dual of an abelian group is isomorphic to itself. But if this is not abelian, then we don't have this result. It makes no sense, in fact. Okay, so the group, okay, the group of tensor automorphism of the identity functor is canonical isomorphic to that. The homomorphism, so you take an homomorphism, an element here, corresponding to, yeah, so you have an isomorphism between tensor automorphism and that. So you take an element here corresponding to an element here, which is that. So this is defined as follow. You take a simple object, the element, okay, you take an element, an automorphism of X, because this is simple, this is just a scalar, non-zero scalar, because it's an automorphism. Okay, so given a simple object, the element determine a grading of this group, the group of non-zero scalar. And the grading is as this way, so just this scalar. And so you have the grading for this group, but remember that this is universal grading group. So you can apply universality. So you get by universality a morphism, a homomorphism between this and this, and so you can define this way. Okay. So you start from that. This is completely characterized by scalar, by collection of scalar for every simple object. And then you apply universality to get a homomorphism between that and that. And so from that, you define that. And in fact, this is saying that is an isomorphism. Okay, so the second part of proposition 2.32, so this one, where is it? Yeah, imply that if you take a fusion subcategory containing the adjoint subcategory, then each and for each element in the universal grading group, so the component is in D or the intersection is 0. Okay, so it's really a kind of partition. There is nothing in between. So two grading are called equivalent if there exists an isomorphism such that this diagram commute, etc. So corollary 2.5. Oh, now we will, as I said, we are in the main part, so we only read the statement but not the proof. But here the proof is, I guess this is the first proof, the first word proof written here. So there is a one-to-one correspondence between fusion subcategory containing CAD and subgroup given by this correspondence. So you take a fusion subcategory containing CAD and you apply it the subgroup of elements in the universal grading group such that the intersection is non-zero. Or if you take a subgroup, you associate the fusion subcategory of the component corresponding to the element in G. So this is clear. Okay, so this is direct by the previous proposition. So now let's consider a fusion subcategory D among all grading of C that are trivial on D, which are trivial on D, which means its trivial component contains D. Among all grading of C that are trivial on D, so you take a grading of C restricting to D, in fact, its trivial component contain D. Yeah, the trivial component of this grading contains D. This exists, there exists a universal one given by the composition. So here, what we want here, we define a kind of universal grading with respect to a fusion subcategory. So you have a universal grading, a proper universal grading, the usual universal grading as defined before, but there is a relative universal grading with respect to a fusion subcategory, and this is what we want to define here. So instead of considering all the grading, you consider all the grading whose trivial component contain D. And you can apply the universality for this family. There is a universal one given by the following composition. So what is that? So the simple object. Okay, so there's a partition. For each simple object, you associate its degree. I guess this is degree here. And then to this group, you have the quotient by G, where G is a normal subgroup generated by the image of that. Okay, so this is a bit technical. So you have the universal grading group of D. Okay? And you can define the image of the universal grading group of D in the universal grading group of C. So this universal grading group of D is this, if and only if the adjoint subcategory is included in D. In general, so in this case, there is no ambiguity about this definition of image. In this case, this is exactly that, what we define here. But if, in general, it is a subgroup of that corresponding to the finest grading of C respecting that. Okay. So corollary 2.6, there is a one-to-one correspondence between equivalence classes of faithful grading. There is a one-to-one correspondence between equivalence classes of faithful grading and fusion subcategory D containing the adjoint subcategory, such that this group is a normal subgroup of that. Okay. So more precisely, to each fusion subcategory containing the adjoint, we associate the universal grading. We associate the universal grading with respect to D. And to each grading, we associate the trivial component. Okay. So let me read that again. There is a one-to-one correspondence between equivalence classes of faithful grading of C, equivalence classes of faithful grading of C, okay, and fusion subcategory D containing C had, such that this is a normal subgroup of it. Okay. Okay, so I skip the proof. If you want to hear me reading the proof, you have to go to the video of last semester. So now we can skip a lot. Yeah, here we can skip a lot. So what is written in blue usually is what is covered, what is written is a kind of reformulation of what is written in the paper. And what is written in other color than blue, it basically is some additional details. I added some more details which are not in the paper. The results follow. So where is the end of the proof here? The end of the proof is here. So I skip this proof. You have to go to the next last semester video if you want to have this proof in details. Okay. So remark. If C is braided, then the universe. This is what I said. If C is braided, the universal grading group is abelian. Consequently, in this case, the normality condition in this corollary is automatic. Here you have a normality condition here, because this is stated in general. We don't assume the category to be braided. In particular, we don't assume the quadratic ring to be commutative. Of course, the quadratic ring of a braided fusion category is commutative. So in particular, the universal grading group is abelian. So every subgroup is normal in an abelian group. So in the braided case, you can omit that, but in general, you really need that. Okay. So in fact, in the braided case, you can omit all that. There is really, in the braided case, there is really a one-to-one correspondence between faithful grading of C and fusion subcategory containing the adjoint subcategory. In the braided case, you can omit that. Okay. Dimension. So, what was section 2.3? The title of 2.3 was universal grading. So, okay, we finish about universal grading. Now, let's review the notion of dimension. So, let's see, be a fusion category. The tensor product in C induce a ring structure on the Grothendieck ring. So I'm not able to read what I wrote. There are two distinct but related notions. There is two distinct but related notion of dimension. One taking value in the real and one in the field. Yeah, so we assume the field to be algebraically closed of characteristic 0, but in fact, this in general it is. You can think about C. But in fact, there are other fields which are algebraically closed of characteristic 0, not C. For example, I don't know, CP. But this notion of Frobenius power dimension, in fact, is specifically take value in the real. Okay. So one is called the Frobenius power dimension, and the other is the categorical dimension. And this notion of categorical dimension exists even if the field is not algebraically closed, I guess. You can have, or if it is not of characteristic 0, you can have a categorical dimension, which is, for example, an element in a finite field, or an element in a, when it is of characteristic P or something like that. But the Frobenius power dimension is always a real number. So the Frobenius power dimension is a ring homomorphism between the Grothendieck ring and the real, such that the image of the simple object are non-negative. So as recalled in the analysis paper of Lettinkov, Nitsche, Shostrick, there exists a unique such homomorphism. So this is basically due to Frobenius and Perron, but when you reformulate this in the framework of fusion category, you can say it's unique such homomorphism. And in fact, this image is always greater than or equal to 1 for a simple object. But for a non-zero object, in fact. Moreover, the value of that for all objects. So these are algebraic integers in a certain cyclotomic field. So it's cyclotomic integer. And this is a very, very useful, necessary criterion for categorification, because you can have fusion ring. It's very easy to find fusion ring whose Frobenius power dimension are not cyclotomic integer. So you can automatically deduce that it cannot be categorified, at least over the complex field, I guess. Maybe if it is, yeah, for other field, it's not clear. It's not known. It's not true, maybe. So the Frobenius power dimension of fusion category is just the sum of the square of the Frobenius power dimension of the simple object. Exactly as the order of a group is the sum of the square of the character on 1, or the sum of the square of the dimension of the irreducible representation. This is exactly what this formula is generalizing. This is a positive cyclotomic algebraic integer. Furthermore, according to Ostrich, the ideal generated by this number is in the ring of algebraic integer is stable under the action of the Galois universal Galois group, like that. So again, this is very useful. So take a finite dimensional semi-simple of algebra H over a field K, and consider the fusion category of representation. A finite dimensional representation of this of algebra. The standard dimension homomorphism, so the dimension of the representation, satisfy that, okay, for all non-zero. It follows that, okay, so in this case, the standard dimension is exactly the Frobenius point dimension. In particular, the Frobenius point dimension of the representation category of the Hopf algebra is exactly the dimension of the Hopf algebra. So now, for the last 5 minutes of the class, what about trace, square norm, and global dimension. So category now, what about the categorical dimension? So you take a fusion category. C, you you take a natural isomorphism between the identity functor and the double dual functor, not necessarily tensor. Such an isomorphism exists in every fusion category and is uniquely determined by a collection of a collection of isomorphism between the simple object and its double dual. Okay. Now, for any object, define evaluation and co-evaluation map. So this is how the rigidity, the dual structure is defined. So X star is defined as an object in C together with two morphisms called evaluation and co-evaluation from X star tensor X to 1 and from 1 to X tensor X star defined depicted this way. So we usually omit this part, so we just write this like that or like that, satisfying the zigzag relation. Okay, so evaluation and co-evaluation map. So given a morphism F from X to X, we define the trace depend R. So given such a natural isomorphism, we can define the notion of trace like a closed loop like that. The problem with defining the trace as a closed loop is that the closed loop is defined by evaluation and co-evaluation map, but if you do like that and like that again, you arrive at a double dual. That's why you need a transition between the double dual and X itself. So this transition is given by the choice of a natural isomorphism. Okay, so for a morphism between that, define the two traces depending on that, if you close the loop on the left or on the right. So the trace plus of F is closed on the right. So I omit to read this, but in fact, this is just, you have the morphism between X and X. Here you have co-evaluation map, identity evaluation map, and natural transformation. So you really have a morphism between 1 and 1. So we really have a scalar because the unit is linear simple. If you close the loop on the left, you have another number. Define another number this way. So the dimension of the object X, you have two notions of dimension this way. If you replace F by identity, and then you have a left dimension, right dimension, and left dimension of X. So these dimensions are non-zero. They may not be the same. They may not be the same. In fact, they will be always the same if and only if the category is spherical. I guess this should be the definition of spherical, when these are the same. In general, they are not the same. They may not be the same, in fact, because as I said, for fusion category, it's an open problem when they always have a spherical structure. So in general, they may not be the same, even if we don't have a counterexample. We know they are non-zero. These values are not canonical, and this is a very important point here. I will finish with that, because it depends on the choice of this natural transform isomorphism. Depend on this choice. So this depends on the choice, this depends on the choice, but the product of the two is independent of the choice. Which is known as the Muger square norm of X, but I guess this notation, Muger square norm, is no more used. It's just the square norm. But this means that this was introduced by Muger, I guess, here. So this square norm is independent of the choice of that. And this is an exercise, in fact. Okay, so I will stop here because this is time to stop. So the problem is that I need another color because I don't know.
So
You have a question?
yeah, so maybe I'll ask. So D plus is the Perron-Frobenius dimension?
No. This is a left categorical dimension.
Oh, okay.
So the right. The right.
Mm.
So you have
I got it.
they are the same. D plus and D minus are the same
Oh.
in the spherical case by definition. And they are the same as the Frobenius per dimension in the pseudo-unitary case. So, so I stop. It's not here. Here. So tomorrow we will restart from here. So we did, almost 22 pages. Yeah, so it's good. I guess we will finish the reviewing part in 4 sessions. Okay, see you tomorrow. And if you remember, if you have questions, please ask on the WeChat group. If you are not in the WeChat group, please go to the WeChat group by scanning this QR code. So I will skip it for 10 seconds, scan this QR code, and then ask question on the WeChat group. So usually we are almost no question in the class. So I don't know why people are very shy, but you can, there is no problem. You can ask question, and I will try to answer it before the next class. Ask question about the class or close to the class, because 2 years ago, people was starting to ask questions, not in the WeChat group, but in private, not about the class, but about their academic path or something like that. So, okay, I can answer that in private, but it should be very limited. But what I am mainly interested in here is people asking questions about the class in the WeChat group. And if you are too shy, you can ask in private. But please do not ask too much questions which are out of the topic of the class in private. I can answer a few one, but not so much. Okay. So see you tomorrow. I will stop here. So here. There is my note. Here. Yeah. So tomorrow we start from here.